Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about Kamala Das and we are going to study her poem Next to Indira Gandhi. In this lecture module, I am going to talk about Kamala Das and we are going to study some of her major works. Kamala Das is someone who is being known as a confessional poet. So we are going to study the characteristic of the confessional poetry. Next, we are going to read the text and analyze the text. Then I am going to give you the historical perspective of the poem itself. And in the end, we are going to look towards some thematic aspects of the poem Next to Indira Gandhi. Kamala Das, also known as Kamala Suraiya, was a sophisticated Indian poetess born on 31st March 1934 in Kerala, Malabar district. She is a bilingual Indian writer who composes in English as well as Malayalam, which is her native language. Much of the Kamala Das writing are in Malayalam, published under the pen name of Madhavi Kutty. Kamala Das is one of the first generation modern English poet who gave rise to the new poetics for themselves and started new themes and techniques around 1960. She was a dominant voice in 1960s post-colonial era. Kamala Das poetry is characterized by the best expression of the feminine sensibility suppressed by the patriarchal community. Her poetry is considerably confessional and autobiographical in nature. She is perhaps the first Hindu woman to write honestly about her sexual feeling. Feminist consciousness and language found an exponent of sensuality and spirituality in Kamala Das, who, unmindful of the brickbats and accolades, carried on untiringly, creating poems of abiding charm, enduring empathy, and inconceivable audacity. Now, let us look into some of the major work of Kamala Das. Her collection of poetries include Summers in Calcutta in 1965, The Descendant in 1967, The Old Playhouse and the Other Poems in 1973. Kamala Das has written an autobiography, My Story, which was published in 1976. Apart from this, she wrote two novels, Manas in 1975 and Alphabet of Lust in 1976. She was honored with Sahitya Academy Award in 1985 and she was also shortlisted for the Nobel Prize in 1984. According to Malayalam poet Sachidanand, I quote, "She is not any woman or incarnation of essential womanhood. If at all, she is an Indian poet writing in English when Indian poetry in English is breaking free from rhetorical and romantic tradition." Unquote. Now, let us look how Kamala Das is known as the confessional poet. We are going to look towards the trait of the confessional poetry. The term confessional was first used to describe a kind of poetry that Robert Lowell wrote in his life studies. Over the years, this new trend has developed into the confessional school of poetry of a certain defined characteristics. The confessional poets have a capacity of ruthless self-analysis and a tone of utter sincerity. They speak in terms of I, emphasized lyricism, and give us a psychological equivalent to his mental state. The poetry of Kamala Das have so many characteristics of this confessional poetry. Now let us look into the text of Next to Indira Gandhi, and then we are going to give a brief analysis of the poem. Now let us look into the text of Next to Indira Gandhi by Kamala Das. Next to Indira Gandhi, my father, I feared the most. He was the one who told me when I was 5 that dark children should only wear white. He was the one who had no time for me when I was growing up, lost and lanky, with braces on my teeth and tortoise shell glasses covering my eyes. He was the one who attended the Rotary lunch every Tuesday without fail and signed away the fat checks for charities. But when I saw him each day for half a minute climbing down the stair, he stared past me. His office problems kept his thoughts away from us. Father, I ask you now without fear, did you want me? Did you ever want a daughter? Did I disappoint you so much? With my skin as dark as yours and my brooding ways? On Saturday, you saw the Batney show at Metro, seated in the third row right. The Smiths were with you, or another pair, as sleek as they and white. Twice I sat with you. Mrs. Smith has insisted on it. The films were both Laurel and Hardy stuff. You chose me, clothes for me, my tutors, my hobbies, my friends, and at 15, with my first sari, you picked me a husband. I am grateful for choosing for me a man and a life of suburban dullness, brightened with embroidery and croquet work and the Thursday cookery class, but it was not the rightmost groove for me. It wasn't my cup of tea. I know I let you down, Father, but you have punished me enough, haven't you? We are quiet today. You are dead. Nobody fears you now, and I feel freed from fear at last. Feel no relief at all. I feel dead, more dead than you. Now let us look towards the structure of the poem Next to Indira Gandhi. When we talk about the structure of the poem Next to Indira Gandhi, this poem was published under the collected poems Only the Soul Knows How to Sing in 1996. So this is one of the poetry from that segment. When we talk about the title of the poetry, or what we people can say, the tone is something which is a very direct kind of a tone. The rhyme scheme is something which is traditional, and here what we see, the structure of the poem is divided into, the poem is something which has been divided into 3 stanza, and each stanza contains 14 lines. Again, when we just look towards the poetries of the Kamala Das, so Kamala Das poetry has a direct appeal. It has a very distinct kind of a quality, especially when we talk about the poetry of Kamala Das. These poetries are not the poetries in general. Actually, these are the poetries of emotion. They do not appeal directly to the mind or the intellect. They directly appeal to the heart. And in order to sustain or in order to serve this purpose, Kamala Das uses the technique of repetition of the words and sentence. Now let us look towards the text. Now let us look towards the title of the poem, the significance of the title of the poem. Now let us look towards the significance of the title next to Indira Gandhi. Here there is no direct reference to the great political leader Indira Gandhi, but here she is talking about the time period when national emergency was being imposed during Indira Gandhi government, and that was the time period of 1975. During that time period, these kind of gathering was considered as anti-government meeting. During that time period, Kamala Das was working with Pritish Nande, and they were publishing and writing certain kinds of poetry. But this kind of meeting was something which was being considered wrong. So there was a kind of a pressure to stop these kind of public meeting, even though her father was Kamala Das' father was the president of Indian Newspaper Society in 1976-77. They asked them to discontinue them, but she referred to a comply, and the police entered her home in 1976 in search of incriminating anti-Indira Gandhi material. Later on, this is what we people have seen, that in 1977 Indira Gandhi government fell, but this time period is again which is being reflected in one of her poem Terror, where she is talking about the nightmare of the emergency itself, that time period. Later on in July, she got a kind of a chance to meet Indira Gandhi, where she was being encouraged by Indira Gandhi itself. And here, this kind of experience which happened in her life created a kind of a fear. So this is how she is saying that apart from Indira Gandhi, next to Indira Gandhi, my father I feared the most. So here she is referring, that means ki apart from Indira Gandhi, the other person she fear is her father. So why she hates her father so much and why she is afraid? Because she calls her father as a kind of a dictator or as a kind of an autocratic kind of a personality. So that is why she is saying that she portrays her father, her autocratic father, as a person she feared the most. He was the one who told me when I was 5 that dark children should only wear white. So here this kind of reference is something which is being given, that her father was someone who believed a kind of a Gandhian philosophy. So there was a kind of a strict rule that all the members of her family are going to wear white khadi clothes. So here what she is saying that she was only at the age of 5 when her father told her that what she should do, because her complexion is dark, so all the dark girls or all the members of the family should wear white clothes. Now what she is talking about here, when we just look towards the kind of a life which was being lived by Kamala Das. So Kamala Das lived a kind of a very contradictory kind of a life. So here she was being born in a kind of a family where she has seen each and every type of culture. She's talking about her life in Calcutta itself. So here what she's saying that he was the one who had no time for us. So again it is being forcing on the kind of the patriarchal community, where the father is someone who just gives random orders, and the children, they just have to follow it up. And this is what she was saying, that her life was something which was dwindling between these two timelines. Okay, so here her father was not having time for her, and when she was growing up, so her father can be considered as someone who has not influenced her life, who has not brought a kind of a change in her life. This is somewhere where she's saying that her father has no soft, when we just look into the poem, she doesn't have any soft words for her father. Her father was no shaping kind of a figure in the formation of her character, and that kind of a difference is something which is being reflected over here with the lines that he was the one who had no time for me when I was growing up. So this is where she is saying that she was scared of her father, and the kind of the life which they shared was not a kind of a healthy life. There was a kind of a difference. Lost and lanky, with braces on my teeth and tortoise shell glasses covering my eyes. Here she's talking about that when she was growing up, she hated herself, because this is what she is saying, that she was lost and lanky. She was lost in her thoughts. Why? Because when these people were there in Calcutta, so in Calcutta, brown color was something which was being considered as a very exceptional color. Okay, so here, lost and lanky, with the braces on my teeth and tortoise shell glasses covering my eyes. So here she is emphasizing on this kind of a note, that she used to wear the glasses, the thick glasses. Her eyesight was weak, and she was just an average looking kind of a girl, and her dark complexion was seen exceptional, because this is where she is talking about that she was the first dark girl in the family. So here he was the one who attended the Rotary lunch. So here she is talking about the personality of her father, that how her father was a public figure. So she was someone who was dwindling between these two kind of the life itself. Every Tuesday without a fall and without a fail, and signed away fat checks for the charity. So her father was a public figure, where he donated plenty and plenty of money during the charities, for the charities itself. So it was totally a public figure, and personally he was not having time for his own children. So, but when I saw him each day for half a minute climbing down the stairs, he stared past me. His office problems kept his thoughts away from us. So she always felt secluded. They never had a kind of an eye-to-eye contact. There was no bond of togetherness between, they never shared this kind of father-daughter relationship. And this is something which they are talking in the first stanza. She is talking in the first stanza. So this is where she is saying that how suppressed she was and how she felt when she found that her father is not having time for her as well as for her mother. So that is something that is in the form of a complaint which she is talking about. Now in the next stanza, she is saying that, Father, I ask you now without fear, did you want me? Was I always a kind of, did you ever want a daughter? Did I disappoint you so much? So here she is talking about that being such a kind of a dark girl, dark complexion kind of a girl, she is directly addressing to her father that ever you wanted me in your life, or why my dark color is something which was being seen in a form of an exception. Did I disappoint you much with my skin as dark as yours and my brooding ways? Brooding ways here talks about that she never followed the kind of the conventional norms of the society. She was the one who was very different in the family. And here what she is talking about, here she is saying that again, she's talking about the life in the Calcutta, that during that time period, every brown girl felt discriminated in the Catholic school because even in her home, she felt vague and indifferent. And on the other hand, when she looked toward her father was someone who was posing a model of austerity, and that was something that where he was asking everyone to wear the homespun white khadi clothes. So this is something where she is talking about that how she lived a kind of a life in this kind of a patriarchal community where all the things were being pre-decided by her father itself. On Saturdays, you saw the matinee show at Metro, seated in the third row right. Okay, so this is where she is saying that it was your public life, you was a very different kind of a personality. That means you lived a kind of a dual life. In the public, you were different, and at home, you were different. So the Smiths were with you or another pair. So his father was her father was someone who was always having a kind of a company with these white people. He used to sit with those white people, as sleek as they and white. So here this complexion white is something which is being already mentioned. Twice I sat with you. So she got a kind of an opportunity to sit only twice. Mrs. Smith has insisted on it, and that was only just because of one reason, that someone else have asked that why don't you bring your daughter, and they used to sit together, and the stuff itself was a pure English kind of a stuff where they used to watch these kind of the comedies, Laurel and Hardy stuff. Now again, what we people can say that here, this is where she is talking about that how her life was something which was being ruled and dominated by her father itself, and father was the someone who was the deciding kind of a factor in the family. You chose my clothes for me. So this is the time period where she is saying that even the clothes she used to wear was something which was being decided by her father itself. Out of a girl, expected out of the wife, that what she will do, she will just do all the household chores, and it is being expected that she should know cookery, she should know all the kind of the works, and even but it was not the rightmost groove for me. It wasn't my cup of tea. So this is something which is a kind of an agitation, or this is something where she's saying that all these things were not my cup of tea. I never wanted to be, because I always wanted to achieve a kind of a freedom, and this freedom, by enclosing me, by isolating me, you cannot make me free. So here she is saying that that was not my part. I never wanted to become a kind of a housewife. And this is what we people have seen, that later on, after her marriage itself, she was the one who started writing poem at the age of 6 itself, and later on she started publishing her poem at a very tender age. And this is what we people have seen, that when she was around 37, she wrote her first autobiography, and that was My Story. So at a very young age, she was writing her own autobiography itself. So I know I let you, father. I know I let you, father, because she never followed those conventional norms, and she was the one who always raised her voice. She never compromised with the kind of the situations which are being given. So here it is something which is being suggested in a tone of a rebel, and this is what it says, that the rebellious attitude of the poet itself, and this is being reflected over here. I know I let you down, father, because by breaking all these kind of the conventional norms of the society, that time also she raised her voice against this patriarchal community. But you have punished me enough, haven't you? So this is in a form of a question where she is asking, we are quiet today. So both of us, neither you raise your voice nor I raise my voice. So there is a kind, again, here, if we just look towards the first stanza itself, they never had a kind of an eye contact. Her father never used to look at her. Now, this is what we people have seen, that here she is saying that I know I let you down, father, but you have punished me enough, haven't you? We are quiet today, we are dead, nobody fears you now. I am freed from fear at last, feels no relief at all. I feel dead, more dead than you. So this last line is something which describes a kind of an agony. It again puts a kind of a question, that whether she is in a kind of a happiness, or whether she is in a kind of a turmoil which is happening inside her mind. So now if we just look towards the theme of the poem itself, so here when we just look towards the poem, it is something which is being written from the perspective of the daughter, who, after the loss of her father, instead of lamenting over the death, she talks about a kind of a freedom and a relief. Now again, when we just look towards the another thing, here she is saying that how her life was something which was being controlled and governed by her father. So here, this is what we people have seen, that her father failed to give a kind of a comfort, love and support. Again, it predicts another aspect, and that is a kind of a generation gap which the daughter and the father holds in between. There, here she is also talking about identifying herself. She is talking about her own self. She is talking about where the females are considered as the suppressed, or they are being dominated by the males of the society. So now we are moving towards the conclusion of the poem, and this is what we people have seen, that it was the father, and where she is saying that it was her father who used to choose clothes for her. And on the other hand, when we just look towards when we move further, it says that my tutors, my hobbies, my friends, Okay, so everything was something which was being decided by her father itself, and this is something which is being reflected in a very uh, different, the agony, the kind of agony which she is sharing or which she is confronting right now. So this is what we people can say. Okay, this is the kind of a case which prevail in the kind of the prevailing social and economic structure. So this is something where her father is doing what most of the middle class family fathers do, because they say that whatever they are doing is something which is under the best interest of their daughter itself. And it is being said in a very ironical tone that at 15, with my first sari, you pick me a husband. Okay, so here what she is trying to say, that at the age of 15, when she was growing up and her life was something which was the life of imagination, where there were certain kind of the notion of the individuality and the romantic love. In that time period, the real Kamala Das was someone who was being married at a very tender age. I am grateful. She is thanking her father because her father, if you just look towards her autobiography itself, the marriage of Kamala Das was never a successful marriage. So here what she is saying, that I'm grateful for choosing for me a man and a life of suburban dullness, brightened with embroidery and croquet work. So here this is something which is being expected out of a girl, expected out of the wife, that what she is what she will do, she will just do all the household chores, and she it is being expected that she should know cookery, she should know all the kind of the works, and even but it was not the rightmost groove for me. It wasn't my cup of tea. So this is something which is a kind of an agitation, or this is something where she's saying that all these things were not my cup of tea. I never wanted to be, because I always wanted to achieve a kind of a freedom, and this freedom, by enclosing me, by isolating me, you cannot make me free. So here she is saying that that was not my part. I never wanted to become a kind of a housewife. And this is what we people have seen, that later on, after her marriage itself, she was the one who started writing poem at the age of 6 itself, and later on she started publishing her poem at a very tender age. And this is what we people have seen, that when she was around 37, she wrote her first autobiography, and that was My Story. So at a very young age, she was writing her own autobiography itself. So I know I let you father. I know I let you father, because she never followed those conventional norms, and she was the one who always raised her voice. She never compromised with the kind of the situations which are being given. So here it is something which is being suggested in a tone of a rebel, and this is what it says, that the rebellious attitude of the poet itself, and this is being reflected over here. I know I let you down, father, because by breaking all these kind of the conventional norms of the society, that time also she raised her voice against this patriarchal community. But you have punished me enough, haven't you? So this is in a form of a question where she is asking, we are quiet today. So both of us, neither you raise your voice nor I raise my voice. So there is a kind, again, here, if you just look towards the first stanza itself, they never had a kind of an eye contact. Her father never used to look at her. Oh, if if we just look towards the text, the thematic aspect of the text itself, here this is what we people have seen, that this poem is something which is written from the perspective of the daughter who has lost her father, but instead of lamenting, she talks about a sense of freedom and relief. Here, if we just look towards the another aspect, that is the father-daughter relationship, her father is projected in such a kind of a manner that her father was never being able to give a kind of a comfort or love or support to her daughter. Again, this is what again, which this poem next to Indira Gandhi reflect is a kind of a generation gap which the father and the daughter shares together, which is again associated with the suppression of the female in the patriarchal community, that all the things are something which are being decided by the father itself. And now here she is saying that she felt nostalgic, she felt suppressed, and that is why this is something which is being reflected in a form of a rebel. So this rebellious attitude is seen in the nature of Kamala Das, where she was never satisfied with the kind of the nurturing which was being given to her. Again here, when we just look towards the conclusion, one can easily see that Kamala Das is a modern English poet who is very sensitive and feminine. She found herself in custom-ridden orthodox society which was dominated by the men who looked different and acted different. And even when we just look in those lines that publicly he was someone who was, her father was someone who was giving money in the charities, and at home he was a very different kind of a figure. So that is something which is creating a kind of a difference. That means they looked different and they acted different. Again, this is how they say that they looked funny and repulsive, self-centered and proud to Kamala Das. So here she is saying that women are someone who are being considered as the dolls in the hands of the male. So she was not able to adjust herself in this kind of a situation, and that kind of sensitivity is something which is being highlighted that through her poem. And this is where she makes a kind of a mark in the confessional mode of the writing. So this is all about Kamala Das and her poem next to Indira Gandhi. I hope you like this video. Thank you.